In this chapter, we are defining our first REST API endpoint for uploading files. For the actual file upload, we use Multer. We delve into that a little bit. We are storing the actual conversion data in MongoDB via Mongoose. We're having a short look at Postman, a useful tool for testing REST APIs. And we're going to look at MongoDB Compass, which allows you to inspect the MongoDB databases. Okay, let's just delve right into the code. So we start off by creating a new file in the routes folder, which will contain all our API endpoints. So of course we need a bunch of boilerplate code. We need Express, of course. We need to have access to the router object. And then we also need to get access to our API controller, which is a model we still have to write, which connects essentially these API endpoints to the library functions for the conversion queue and for the server. After that, we are creating our endpoint. For now, we only have one, which is dealing with the actual file upload. So that's going to be a post request called file upload in our case, and that's really it. And again, that's getting passed on the controller, which we're going to write a little bit later. For the actual file upload, we are using Multer, which is a very popular middleware package for Node for handling multi-part form data uploads. We also use another package called GUID, which simply creates unique identifiers, and those will be used later when we store our files in unique directories. And of course, we need to import Multer as well as this UID package into our application, which we do with these require statements. And now we basically need to tell Multer where to store the files that have been uploaded and what their file name should be. And Multer provides two callbacks for that purpose. So we start off in this case by generating this unique ID. So each file will be put in its own separate folder. And we have to create that folder in here if it doesn't exist. Anyway, that's actually redundant, so that folder should be unique, but we're doing this here anyway. We're checking if the directory exists, and if it doesn't exist yet, we create a new one in this callback. And we need to pass in the directory name again and return from that callback. And finally, for the file name, we're choosing the original file name of the uploaded file. Then we need to make sure that Multer is actually used when a request is made, and also we are passing in which body item is used for the file upload here. They have a unique name that we will going to be using later when we are actually making the request. And of course, we shouldn't forget to include our API endpoints as well when a request is made, including those here. All API calls prefixed with API, and of course, they need to be included into the application as well. Now it's time to create that controller JavaScript file. We also call it API.js. For now, there's only one function. Again, this dealing with this file upload. So every time a file is uploaded, that function will be called. And in this first chapter, we just return a simple message. I'll put something in the console that says that the file has been received and what the name of that file is. Later on, we're going to do a lot more, update the database and so on, and we call other functions out of the libraries. And we are almost done. All we need to do now is create this uploads directory. We forgot to do that. That's where all the files will go. That will be uploaded by Multer. And in order for things to run correctly, we also need to include the FS, the file system, on top of this here. So if there are no typos, you should be able to run this application now without any errors in the console. But in order to test the endpoint, because we don't have any client yet, we need to use a separate tool called Postman. So Postman is a very popular tool to test REST APIs. All you do is specify your API endpoint and the kind of request you want to make. In this case, we also want to pass in a file, so we specify the key that we previously called file in the body, and we specify that this is a file. We need to pass a file. You can't see it here, but I'm selecting a CAD model, a simple CAD model here, and then all I have to do is press send, and the file, the request gets made against our server, and we're getting an error message. So let's see what's going on here. So it turns out that there was indeed an error in our code, and you can see from the error message in the console what the error might be. We forgot the / to differentiate these two directories. We start the server again, we run the request, and this time we get an OK as output. And if you now go back into our application and look into our uploads folder, we see that the CAD file has been correctly uploaded into this folder. So what our server can do so far is receive a file and put it into a temporary directory. All that's left to do now for the rest of this chapter is create a database entry for this file. To do that, we are creating a new Mongoose schema in the models directory called conversion item. And of course, we need a bunch of boilerplate code to pull in Mongoose and the schema itself. And then we create this conversion item schema, which has two fields. One of them is the name of the CAD file. And the second one, and it's of type string, and it is required, so that means it needs to be there. And the second one is the actual conversion state of this model. Initially, as it comes in, it's of course unconverted, and that's something, that information we need to keep track of. We also, for simplicity reasons, we just give it a type string, and that's it really. And after that, we need a little more boilerplate code to export that schema. So now it's time to create the actual server module in that libs directory. And that is a module where all the functionality around uploading files, storing files permanently on the server, and creating data about the files will be located. Everything around CAD conversion will be in a separate module dealing with this conversion queue. And we're going to write this throughout the next chapters. So of course we need to pull in Mongoose and the conversion item schema we just created. And then in that function, there's going to be for now just a single function called add. That is a function that adds a new item into the conversion queue. And in order to do that, of course, it needs the directory where that file was stored and the name of the CAD model. And from there, it simply creates a new entry in the database based on that existing schema with the name, the item name, and with a very specific conversion state. All conversions start out with pending. That means the conversion hasn't happened yet. It's in a kind of a state where it is about to be converted. And then at the end, we save out this database to the database, and we return its unique identifier. And of course, we still need to call that function from the controller. It returns the item ID, and we pass in the location of the file and its name. And that item ID is returned to the client as a JSON object. And finally, we can't forget to include our new server module in the controller as well. Okay, and now if we are returning to Postman and making this request again, you see that this item ID that is returned in the response of the request. Another useful tool besides Postman is MongoDB Compass, which we can use to inspect our database. So in this case, we can just connect to our MongoDB session, look at the conversion service database that we created, and as expected, we have one conversion item right now with the name of the uploaded file and the conversion state as pending. Okay, that concludes chapter 2.